Congressman Keith Ellison, we got you to our left. Okay. You missed introductions. Welcome. We're going to kick it off with TPP with you and with Mr. Pocan and with Laura Wallach, and welcome. Mark's even on a tighter schedule than you, so he gets to go first.
Go for it, Mark.
Thank you. Welcome, and thank you.
Well, no, thank you. And, update, Lori can give you lots and lots of details, as she is the person we all go to for information and lots of details. But I think with the bill being introduced last week, there is some good news, the fast track bill. In that no House Democrat went on to sponsor that. So that's really positive. I think, and just from a perspective of, we had a freshman meeting, and Leader Pelosi let us know exactly where we are, kind of where our friends are around TPP. We've had this conversation in different places, and I feel very positive about we are trying to have a very unified front. So having no one on is a really big first step. Taking a step back, we had the letter that went out that Rosa and George Miller and Louise Slaughter led, that has 151 Democrats in the House signed against fast track, and I think there are 27 Republicans who signed a similar letter on the Republican side. Rosa has been saying pretty consistently that 151 really numbers about 170, she thinks, where we're at with people on the Democratic side who are against fast track. So what we're trying to do right now is identify those folks who we think might be squishy, or those folks that need to have a little more information about why we don't want to do fast track, why we don't want to give up our congressional oversight on the TPP. So as much as we can talk a lot about TPP, I think the thing that we need to talk about right now is the fast track bill, because that's the most immediate, that I think might be our best chance not only to try to defeat, but also to see where votes are and to really organize around, because I think a lot of people don't want to give up our congressional ability, our jobs, which are to actually have oversight over this. So I'm just going to say that for now. I'd rather pass it off to Keith and Lori, and then we can be around for any questions.
So as we give it to you guys, just to remind everybody watching as well as in the room, last month PDA delivered 237 letters to congressional member district offices saying no on fast track. Mike Fox and Connor Borland right now are burning up the lines. We think we're going to hit 250 offices by Friday. So in speaking today, if you can address the activists who will be going to those offices and folks in the room, specifically as you said on fast track, and then next steps. Keith, you want to take that?
Well, thanks a lot, Tim. I also want to say thanks to my good friend Mark Pocan. I also want to say thanks to whoever designed this stand and this microphone. Right. I want to also say that the PDA activists are the heart and soul of how we're going to win this, right? This is an activist moment. This is a movement moment. And if any of you have ever looked longingly at like the civil rights movement or the Stonewall Rebellion and thought, boy, I wish I was there, you are. Your moment has arrived. We must defeat this. I'm going to talk a few stats. I know Lori's the leader on that stat thing, and many other things. Lori's been absolutely essential to this effort. But I just want to be very clear. This thing will be won because our people are armed with good information. But the key is that feet in the street, calls, letters. We need to think about doing some rallies down here, some anti-TTP or fast track rallies. We need to get some street heat during the shutdown, the Progressive Caucus. Worked with partners to do 3 rallies in 2 weeks, one of them in the pouring down rain. We need to think about that kind of thing, because the bottom line is this is really not about rationality and facts. At the end of the day, we need to marshal the facts to get the people who are in the middle. But the people who want this, they don't care that it's going to help lose jobs. They know that. In fact, they also know that, here's what they really know. They know that the minimum wage in Vietnam is 30 cents an hour. They know that in Malaysia it's $1.20, and they know that in Singapore there's no minimum wage. And they know that in Vietnam, where we have several documented cases of forced child labor, there's no way, no matter what the minimum wage is in the United States, that we can be competitive with people who are basically doing slave wages or no wages. So that's the deal, right? The people who look at these differentials in pay are looking at that, and anybody who thinks we're just talking about manufacturing jobs, we're talking about high-wage tech jobs, textile jobs, all kind of service sector jobs, call centers, all this stuff. we are deeply implicated in this thing, and this is a movement moment. It's an activist moment, and that's what we've got to absolutely do. So don't think for a moment that the people who really want this and are dedicated to getting it passed will be persuaded by the fact that it's going to hurt American jobs. You think they don't know that? They know that. Let's not treat our our opponents, like they're dumb. They're smart. They know that. They're doing it for that very reason, that they could get somebody to work for 30 cents an hour. Let me also mention that the Progressive Caucus is lined up to oppose this thing. We've had meetings on it, and we're it's not just us; it's many others too. Mike Michaud is leading his trade working group on that, and yesterday we sat down with Ed Schultz, who is fired up to raise the issues because he understands that the international investors who are going to make buckets of money off this if it were ever passed, and the average American worker have adverse interests, and he's on our side. So he's making that point very, very clear. And that'll be on Friday, so tune in. It's nice to have a serious media figure who actually wants to do something good for the average American worker. And totally gets it and never misses it. I just want to just bring us back, and again, I'm sure Lori could elaborate on this a little bit, but if you would indulge me, I just want to just mention that according to the Economic Policy Institute, another awesome progressive partner, they estimate that NAFTA led to the loss of 682,000 U.S. jobs, nearly 700,000 jobs. We can't afford to see how many U.S. workers TPP will replace and displace. In 1993, before NAFTA was implemented, the United States had a $1.6 billion trade surplus with Mexico. In 2010, the U.S. trade deficit with Mexico was over $97 billion, and free trade was not fair trade. Now, let me just wrap up by saying some folks, some of our allies who would richly benefit by us winning this fight against fast track, they sometimes, because of like Fox and other bad media outlets, think that other people across the water, across the border, are taking our jobs. Let me tell you, no child in Vietnam suffering from living in forced labor is taking your job. They are being forcibly impoverished to work. This is in Mexico. They're in a horrific fight. The miners are in a huge fight with the government that is trying to stomp on them and take away their rights to collectively bargain. In Colombia, we're still getting reports of abuses of labor rights, and the labor agreement that was made to sort of facilitate the Colombia Free Trade Agreement, which I'm proud to have voted against, is not being lived up to. And so what's my point? As we're not being selfish American high-paid workers here. What we're actually standing for the human rights of people around the globe from being exploited and abused and oppressed as we stand against these bad free trade deals. So let me wrap up by saying that if you didn't like NAFTA, you're really going to hate TPP. And if you don't like TPP, you can never, ever, ever support the fast track. This is a fast track to poverty. This is a fast track to low wages. This is a fast track to hollowing out the American working class. And I want to just thank you again, Tim Carpenter. Look, high five, brother. I love you. You're the best, and you take care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just want to mention tonight, the Progressive Caucus, special order hour after votes, we're talking about fast track, TPP, and unemployment compensation. So we'll have a number of members.
So can I just say that every week that we're in, Mark Pocan leads Progressive Caucus members for a progressive hour, a progressive message. Please tune in, tell your friends, tweet about it, send out the message. We need to get, if 1% of the American public, which is about 317,000 people, something like that, watched, that'd be awesome. And with our ability to tweet, Facebook, and get the message out, we might be able to do that. It's tonight, right, Mike? So, again, all right.
Now, before you guys take off, I want to bookmark 2 questions for you, but I want to get Lori in here on TPP and then come back to you, Keith, both on Robinhood tax and Mark on Iran sanctions before you guys take off if we could. But I want Lori to weigh in on what she's hearing. And then also again introduce Patrick from Food and Water Watch, who will also be doing major action. We'll hear about that, Patrick, as well. So we'll let Lori go and slip it over to you. Thank you.
Okay, well, our champions here have basically summed it up. The only things I would add, folks, are the fight is in the House. The best way to stop TPP precisely is to make sure there is no fast track. And the fight on fast track's in the House. And as we've heard, this is totally winnable. And not only do we need to make sure that the 51 Democrats who didn't sign the Miller-DeLauro letter also commit to voting no, we got to make sure everyone who did sign that letter doesn't get squishy. So for everybody, the mission at hand for a member of Congress from the House of Representatives, a Democrat who signed the the DeLauro-Miller letter or the Pocan freshman letter, go thank them and make sure that now the bill's been dropped, they're ready to vote no. For members who didn't sign the letter, tell them this is their moment to stand up and do the right thing. And the big development is the legislation got actually dropped, as Mark said. So there is now a bill. It is called the Camp-Baucus Fast Track Bill. And I just want to say 2 things about it. It is exactly the 2002 old fast track that almost every Democrat who was around then voted no on. We pulled each piece of it apart and did a side-by-side comparison electronically of the text. There are literally a handful of words changed and none of them relevant. No matter or not whether the negotiating objectives listed there ever get satisfied, under that process, the president could sign the TPP before Congress votes on it with a guarantee that he could have a yes or no vote in 60 days in the House on legislation he writes that includes anything that is necessary or appropriate. The or appropriate means they can stuff any bunch of horrible things in there that couldn't get through normal order, and this is not subject to committee markup. So the committees can't fix it. It goes to the floor, and there's no floor vote amendments. And yes or no vote, 20 hours of debate. Same thing in the Senate, 30 extra days, which means the Senate can't filibuster, can't do a supermajority vote. It's like a legislative luge run. And the executive branch unilaterally piles all the crap on the sled. So you have no idea even what's being shuttled railroad right through over Congress and democracy. So as a general matter, fast track is a very bad idea. Then you combine that with the TPP, which would rewrite swaths of domestic progressive policy, things that corporations couldn't get done in the sunshine of public process in Congress. Roll back parts of financial reform. Roll back parts of the Food Safety Modernization Act to make sure your kids aren't getting poisonous fish. Roll back pieces of the basically drug price lowering parts of Obamacare that allow medicine formulary purchasing. Would actually sneak in parts of the SOPA type undermining internet freedom rules. All sneaky stuff that has nothing to do with trade, plus includes the offshoring rules that were in NAFTA. These are specific investment rules that promote offshoring. So in this instance with Vietnam, as we heard, the low-wage alternative for offshoring to China. So for jobs, for everything we care about, TPP is very dangerous, and fast track is the only way that thing would get through Congress. Now, as well as Democrats, Republicans, because obviously the math of the House is we could get every single Democrat and you'd still only have 201 votes, and there are 218 votes needed to win. The good news is that about 30 Republicans have come out against. It's everyone from super conservatives to some very establishment folks who think fast track's not constitutional. And they have some very important legal scholars pointing out the problem of basically ripping up this separation of powers that, the founders put in the Constitution. And then you have folks who have problems with particular parts of TPP. If we can make sure we hold on to all those Democrats we need, and folks who are in Republican districts who are out in the country watching this online, go talk to your Republican members, because this is one of those transpartisan issues where the politics is a horseshoe. If the top is corporate, the bottom is progressive and populist. The conservative progressives, the progressives and the conservative populists are closer at the bottom of the horseshoe than the bottom of the horseshoe is to the corporate part of each party. On this one, it's basically the 1% versus the rest of us. And so going to the Republicans and talking about what we see as corporate tribunals that'll undermine our domestic laws, which they see as an invasion of sovereignty by UN tribunals allowed to raid the Treasury, both facts happen to be true, or a ban on Buy America cuts both ways. No one wants to feed their kids unsafe food. So we should not write off the Republicans. There are a lot of Republicans going to oppose fast track. And this is how we did this in 1998. Fast track was defeated by a vote of 171 Democrats and 71 Republicans. Bill Clinton did not get fast track for 6 of his 8 years, and that is how the last big NAFTA expansion, the free trade of the Americas, was killed. So I will stop with that.
For folks that are watching that may not know, where do we direct them to find out who has signed or not signed either the Pocan or the Miller letter? What websites would you direct them?
You can go to our website, tradewatch.org, where we have at a high level of profile the Miller-DeLauro letter and the Pocan letter. But also there you will see an action alert, and you can contact our field director, Ellison, who you can find on the website. You can also tell you for your particular congressional district exactly where the member is. Also, Fire Dog Lake is starting to do a live online whip where they are basically taking all of the public statements, news releases, and members who've come out against fast track, of which have been a bunch. And they're also doing the skunks at the picnic list. And I will just announce a few of those skunks at said picnic. These would be people who have said they're voting for fast track, and they ought to basically hear from everyone who has screaming distance from them. By the way, next week's a congressional reset. So you have an entire week to go find Congressman Quigley, Congressman Ron Kind, and Congressman Meeks of New York. There are folks in Illinois, Wisconsin, and New York who need a verbal 2x4 with respect to voting on fast track. Thank you.
And the third website to visit for those that may not be aware of it is to go to the PDA website and download the letter that you will hand deliver to your congressmember to vote against fast track and to reinstate the money stamps. So people who are watching, if you get to the PDA site, Connor and Mike will make sure you get your letter and you get out to your member of Congress. As we said, our goal is 270. Who's to say we can't hit 300 when we have this kind of talent at the table?